Joining me now, our friends Tim O'Brien, Senior Executive Editor at Bloomberg Opinion and MSNBC political analyst. Also, Alexi McCammon, host of the In Sync with Alexi podcast and an MSNBC political analyst. Welcome, guys. Tim, you wrote about this a few days ago, saying if Trump was not at the center of the action, it's doubtful the parade would have taken on such extravagant and imperial dimensions. Do you expect more Republicans to come out against it after the fact?
No, I think if the Republicans were serious about criticizing this as an unnecessary, unusual, and damaging display of military force.
All right. It's unnecessary. It might be unusual. It's not damaging. Let's all, it's not the best, right? I'm not going to say it's fantastic, spending $50 million on a parade. All right, wasn't necessary, but I'm also the kind of guy that doesn't even really celebrate birthdays that much. Like, I go to work on my birthday. I'll get my kids something nice or whatever, and that is, but I'm not a big parade guy, So I just think the whole, it's kind of like and it's not a slow news day at the very least, right? You got a lot of stuff, a lot of other stuff going on, but for them to be focusing on this kind of just shows you, it's a kind of a petty thing to be talking about, especially with all the other news that's going on in the world right now. And like I said, I think you could probably, they're thinking of the Fox News, watching guys that are like, yeah, the military, blah, blah, blah. And I go, yeah, I love the military. I think that's fine. If there was a poll and you set it on my lap and it came to me and said, well, we can spend $50 million on this parade for the military, or we could do like whatever, I don't know, like maybe clean up the water in Michigan or whatever, like something like that. Like you could probably find something better to do with the money. The military guys, I guarantee you, military guys don't need a parade either, right? They're military guys. Like I know a lot of them, right? They're not chomping at the bit to march around, in a parade. But let's see what else they got here with this.
While there's an actual enforcement action going on in Los Angeles, they would have done it long before this took place. And even Rand Paul, who I credit for trying to criticize it, in the clip said he thinks the president doesn't mean anything wrong by what he's doing. But what does the president mean by engaging in a parade like this? It's self-congratulatory. It's a display. It's a military flex while he's sending the Marines and the National Guard into the streets of Los Angeles. And it is the kind of parade that we're used to seeing in authoritarian regimes in countries like China and Russia, not the U.S. And I think Trump was in touch with all of those things, and he did exactly as he intended.
Alexi, do you think Donald Trump achieved what he wanted with the military parade, especially since it happened against the backdrop of these huge protests across the country?
Yeah, you saw some of his comms folks tweeting out and trying to say that there were 200,000 plus people attending and that it was a huge success. And, there are varying reports and videos that kind of show otherwise, that maybe the planning wasn't done up to par to even encourage that many people to come. Folks weren't even really that interested in going at the scale that maybe they had thought. The weather wasn't as nice, so maybe that had something to do with it. But also, to your point, Alex, there were over 2,100 cities that had planned anti-Trump protests, dubbed No Kings protest, because of the way that they feel Trump is moving toward this authoritarian leadership that they're not used to seeing in America. And this military parade, as much as he wanted it to be about him and the strength of America as a country and the American military, it really comes at a terrible time for the country. It comes at a bad time globally, and at a time when folks across the country are deeply unhappy with how he's using the military against his own citizens in ways we haven't seen before.
Yeah. How has that been going on? Like, what have we seen at this point? Like, I'm on X all the time. I'm browsing, media all the time. I haven't really seen the media. The military rather, clamp down and start like yank people all over the place. Not something that I've seen. If you're talking about National Guard, protecting federal buildings, protecting federal employees, that's one thing. On the whole, it's been pretty a weak tea. A couple of hundred Marines over there holding down the fort. Not that big of a deal, in my opinion, in my estimation. But again, it's a valid argument to be made. Spending money, doing this, the people aren't really into it right now. I got to admit, there's a lot of other things that we would rather see happening than a military parade. And this, again, but this is where, a lot of MAGA are saying, supporting the military. Okay, that's fine. We can support the military. We don't have to have a parade for them to support the military. We can Memorial Day and stuff like that. We can remember those who we lost and things like that. But was this necessary? I'm okay with saying no, it wasn't necessary. you know? And again, this is the difference, right? One side, the MAGA right, libertarian, conservative side, can have disagreements, and they can still see when the left has a point. You know, I'm okay with saying, yeah, they kind of have a point. I wasn't not crazy about. I didn't cancel my plans and go down there and see the parade. You know, like, you know, we're kind of past the parade era in the grand scheme of things, right? We don't like, you know, over here in New York we have the Thanksgiving Day parade, stuff like that. Yeah, I've been it. I've seen it. You know, it's a big balloon, so and actually it's pretty impressive. You know, it's kind of cool, but it's not something that you don't rearrange your life to go to a parade anymore. You know, maybe 50, 60 years ago, before the advent of the internet and television, you know, maybe it would be something that you do. But in this case, you know, like I said, they have a point here.
Yeah, Tim, this contrast between the two events, this split screen America, how do you assess what the country saw play out?
Well, I think that the country has been anticipating Donald Trump doing exactly what he did. At least his critics and the people who didn't vote for him worried about the fact that he would try to expand the office of the presidency into such an authoritarian and an imperial corner that at some point he would simply use the military against his own citizens, which has now happened. You know, that's no longer a theoretical case. He's done it. He's empowered by a court for the most part that has given him great leeway as president to act as he chooses. His administration has invoked various emergencies, contrived or overemphasized, in order to give him the latitude to impose tariffs, deport undocumented migrants, or put the Marines into Los Angeles. And I suspect he'll continue to do so. And I think Americans have to think about what a very overt and direct threat this is to civil society and democratic norms.
Did these events, Alexei, separately serve to divide America more acutely?
Against civil society and democratic. They're pretty. Come on, you have to admit, like they're amusing, right? Like, I mean, they say the most absolutely retarded things on a regular basis, but I don't know. For some of the stuff, you just have to laugh at it because it's just dumb. You know, I don't know if they're just trying to get, you know, some clicks out of the media or whatever, but yeah.
Or was it a healthy reflection of differing opinions? And how much weight do you give to concerns that the president's use of the military is not in line with its real purpose?
No, I mean, I think if anything, I'm almost heartened to see that people still feel comfortable enough under this second Trump term to protest and continue exercising their First Amendment rights, to continue expressing.
Say they don't feel comfortable enough. Like, yeah, we're not going to let you burn down cities. All right. Is that what you mean? Like, where have you, the fact that she just said that is outrageous. The people feel, she's surprised that people feel comfortable enough. Like, to do what? To stand in a square and hold up signs? Nobody's bothering you for doing that. Nobody, anywhere. You may get heckled by people, but there's no wing of any government agency that's stopping you anywhere from doing that. So if what she's talking about is, yeah, he's going to clamp down if you start messing shit up and the people that are in control of that town. Like, for example, LA was a disaster. In New York, that shit got nipped in the bud right away, right? They allowed people to protest and do whatever they wanted to do as long as they were lawful. As soon as they stepped over, clamp down. That's it. It's over. I don't see the issue with that, right? First Amendment right. You can say whatever it is you need to say. You have the right to assemble, protest, make your voices heard. No issues. Once you start impeding other people and start stopping what they have to do, right? You start stopping traffic, right? When people have to get to work, people have to get to school, ambulance have to get by, emergency services has to get by. Yeah, we're not going to have that. We're not going to allow you to do that. That's not an issue. And in New York, the New York people dealt with it, right? The New York law enforcement dealt with it. If you got in the way, they removed you and they arrested you. No problem. In LA, that's not what happened, which is why LA got the National Guard and a couple of Marines to help out along the way.
their dissent at what sometimes feels like a political stress test on the American people of how far the Trump administration is willing to go this time and how many norms they're willing to bust, especially when, as you just mentioned, the court is relatively friendly to them. And anytime they stand in their way, Trump folks seem to go further in proposing something to go against them. So I think it's healthy to have this kind of protest and demonstration. Of course, we don't want anything to be violent, but for the most part, what we've seen is folks really just trying to make their voice heard and to say that we're not okay with these ICE raids and the way that immigrants are being treated in this country.
Yeah, just show me where people were just having their voices heard and somebody was stamping down on them. Like, show me where that happened. I haven't seen it. I haven't seen somebody just standing there saying, hey, with a sign and then a law enforcement guy comes up and just busts out a couple of teeth. I'm not seeing that. What I'm seeing is a bunch of people that are burning shit down to the ground, that are breaking up cinder blocks and throwing, pieces of concrete at officers and at cars or whatever. I've seen people, trying to gain access to federal buildings and stuff like that. That's what I've seen. And that's where I've seen the tamp down happening. I haven't seen people peacefully protesting and getting a boot in their butt from law enforcement. Sorry.
Country.
Tim, I want to have you put your eyes on this list very quickly. Trump's latest financial disclosures reporting over $600 million in income last year, more than $57 million coming just from the Trump family crypto business. And that does not include his meme coin. That was released in January this year. But the income breakdown lists how much he made on merch. $3 million from his coffee table book, $2.5 million from sneakers and fragrances, $2.8 million from Trump watches, $1.3 million from Bibles, over $1 million from guitars. What stood out to you, Tim?
Well, how much on that list, Alex, is possibly just garbage, that particularly the guitars, that he's willing to slap his name on because somebody walks in the door and wants to take advantage of the fact that the man who's sitting in the Oval Office doesn't mind degrading the brand value of both the White House and the president.
Yeah, and what about all the other presidents afterwards? What do? Right, which is even worse. They go and they give a speech for $200,000. You can look it up. It's all there. They all do it. Right. What value are you getting out of that? I mean, at least if I buy a watch, I got something to show somebody, whereas you're going to give a speech at some forum. What does that give you? Or what about the books? His the Bible's not his book, but he probably would say that it is. But his Save America book. All right, $3 million. Yeah, go take a look and see what the last president, how much he made, what Obama made on his book sales. So I mean, again, this is another nothing burger. But I'll let them finish it out, guys. If you can subscribe to the channel, it really helps out a lot. If you throw a comment, I will answer the comment. If you throw a question, I'll answer the question, obviously. I do back and forth with people all the time down below. If you give me a like, that's also great. Thanks a lot.
See, by slapping his name on anything anybody will pay him a fee for. But the thing I think to really keep our minds focused on is the larger ticket items like crypto. Donald Trump is putting the federal government's powers behind the substantiation of crypto trading, platforming as an asset. He is moving the regulatory apparatus in the direction of supporting crypto while his family members have investments both in tokens and in exchanges and other parts of the architecture of the crypto business. And it is a raw financial conflict of interest and another measure of how far we've fallen, I think.
Okay. Tim and Alexi, always good to talk with you both.
Yeah. So that was that. So, I mean, like I said, on the right, I think we can always find some sort of agreement with sometimes with some of the things that the left throws out that's kind of crazy. The military parade, I don't really care. I wasn't a big fan, one way or the other. Could we have used the money to spend more wisely? Of course. A lot of those military guys probably didn't even want to be there. I know some of them. They probably didn't want to be there. It's kind of a whatever day. It wasn't a $50 million worth of a day. But because they push back so hard and because they're so disingenuous overall, it kind of makes the MAGA people be like, no, this was the greatest thing ever. It wasn't the greatest thing ever. We all know that. We all know that. Otherwise, we would have been there, and we weren't there, right? A lot of people weren't there. So again, we can always find kind of common ground with them, but they kind of go off the rails and they spin too much, and they kind of have to, right? Because a lot of things are going well. So when things are going well, you have to exaggerate, a little niche area of something that you don't like to kind of blow it up. Again, this is a huge media day, huge media weekend. There's so much stuff going on, but they're still covering this just because they need to dig into it. But that's it, guys. Thanks a lot for coming out. Hope you enjoyed the video. Please leave me a like, share, subscribe, comment. I will talk back to you, back and forth. It's a lot of fun down in the comments. Thanks you guys so much for coming out, and we'll see you again in the next video. Thanks a lot.